welcome everyone. David Kubatsky is my name. I'm the chairman of the Nash Stream Citizens Advisory Committee. Just a couple of housekeeping chores. First, I need to get, because we are recording, I need to get everyone's permission to be recorded. John Swan is recording us. Are we okay? Albert?
Yes.
Jamie? I'm okay. We're all okay. Good. We're good to go.
Dave, I thought this was a public meeting, so I mean it's nice to ask permission and to get it, but I thought in a public meeting that's something that can be done.
Yeah, I would think it's fine. I just wanted to double check with the committee members, and I didn't think that they'd have any objection to it, but just a courtesy to them. If you need restrooms, I'll just have to go through there in the back. Today you've got an agenda. We're going to be covering a number of different topics, but the first thing I want to do is introduce everyone. David Kubatsky, my responsibility on the Citizens Advisory Committee, we're all volunteers here, is the natural areas and understanding of forest ecology. And I'm going to go with Elizabeth Bell, and you're representing
the Nash Stream Camp Owners Association.
Okay.
Alvin Clucci, Town of Stock.
Norman Clucci, Town of Columbia.
Jamie Sayen, Town of Stratford.
Okay. And we did have some people that said they could not make it tonight. We had Commissioner Scott Mason from Fish and Game who could not make it. Commissioner Sarah Stewart could not make it either. And for some reason, the Secretary of State, David Scanlon, who covers our conservation easements, is busy on recounts with the election. But David's also a forester, so he loves the woods, loves the outdoors, and I think it's a nice break for him to come up to these meetings and to our field trip. Turning to this side.
Clint Savage.
Yep.
I'm the district supervisor for the New Hampshire Bureau of Trails.
Todd Kieran, Forester. I'm Will Gwynn, I'm the administrator for the Forest Management Bureau with the New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands.
Maggie Machinist, Regional Forester with the New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands.
Craig Rennie, Chief of Bureau of Trails.
Sabrina Stanwood, Natural Heritage Bureau, DNCR.
And the Director of Forest and Lands, State Forester.
Patrick Hackley.
Okay. That covers the introductions, and I just wanted to mention, if you have questions during the presentations, feel free to ask. Not about the process, but if you have something about, you're uncertain of a particular thing, go ahead and ask. We'll also have 15 minutes at least at the end to answer questions. Next part, I am going to be doing a presentation. We had a field tour this summer on August 9th, and it was a incredible opportunity for those that made it. You really enjoyed it. To see what's going on. There's a lot of monitoring that's going on, and I just wanted to do a quick recap of what that is.
Sorry.
And I'm going to flip the lights. Yeah. It's not the red one, is it?
Tell you that.
Okay. And let's see, Elizabeth, could you
want to get this one?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay.
Okay, this is our field trip. It's the first time we've actually, that I know of, that have had a field trip to go out and look at projects on the ground, actually conduct some monitoring. And of course we had an agenda. You can't see it from there, but I'll be going through these various items that were here. Our first stop was with Regional Forester Maggie Machinist, and we were looking at a timber sale project. What's the name of that road that we're
Amos Emery.
Which one?
Amos Emery.
Amos Emery. Okay, on that road. And there's a variety of winter and summer harvesting. We walked through a number of the stands just to kind of get an idea of what was going on and looking at the various forestry practices. And as I recall, this was all uneven age management on this particular project. From there, we drove over. We had the use of the shuttle vans for Franconia Notch State Park, which was really nice because it was a weekday, and we were able to transport people over. We went over to look at the west side trail condition and the use on that. We gathered around, and basically we're talking about the types of use. We'll have a discussion a little bit later on all-terrain vehicle us in about some of the monitoring that they're doing. They've got this Northeastern Wildlife Monitoring Project, which is a camera project, and he also talked to us about a grouse drumming project. Now this camera monitoring project, there's 70 different cameras that are throughout New Hampshire. There's 4 of them in Nash Stream, and what they're doing is they're trying to get an idea of what's going on with the populations of wildlife, in particular with moose, because that population is really declining. And it's quite interesting to learn about that particular project. And then of course the annual grouse drumming project. It's over a 10-mile track, and there's points at 1-mile intervals along the way. So we talked about that. You can see the trends. This is a 20-year chart here. Of course, this is a real high point here in looks like 2014 and 2020. I don't know what the reason was, but there certainly were not very many, and then we're back on the upswing here. So it's not a population count. It's really give us a trend. Jamie.
COVID in 2020.
Oh, COVID. No, you're saying Corvid. That's a crow.
Okay.
That's a crow. Okay, so these documents are available through Fish and Game. Then we met with the state biologist, fisheries biologist John McGee, and we're looking at the project that's going on in Nash Stream, restoration work, and it's a really big project. $1.4 million. New Hampshire Fish and Game is working with Trout Unlimited and a variety of other partners to do a lot of enhancement work ever since, of course, the Nash Stream bog blew out and did a lot of damage in the stream. You may not be able to see that very well, but what John was pointing out was on the main stem restoration work. This is the green area in here. And then tributary wood, adding wood to it, and then culvert enhancement work. In some cases, taking out culverts and putting to bed roads that are no longer needed, and so that we can have some aquatic organism passage, and then replacing culverts that are not suitable for trout, for instance, or other aquatic organisms to move through. And there's several culverts that have been replaced, and you can imagine that replacing a culvert on these roads is really quite expensive, but they've got this process, they've got funding to go on, and it's moving along pretty well. So everyone was really interested in that type of activity. Then up at Trail Ponds, we talked about control areas, and there's a new designated 2,000-acre softwood control area. This is 18 and a half road here, and these are the areas. It's a Group 2B soils that they've designated, and this is going to be a control area to look at the long-term effects between management and unmanaged areas. Because a lot of the natural areas, you know, Nash Stream is around 39,000 acres in size, and there's about 18,000, almost half the area in natural areas, but a lot of those are at steeper terrain, higher elevations, mountaintops, along stream corridors, very sensitive areas. Here, it's in more of an area that would essentially be commercially managed for timber harvesting. So we learned about this. We had lunch here, and we also had a briefing by
Tracy Boisvert.
well, yeah, Tracy Boisvert was the person from the lands agency about camp leases, and we learned that. Well, let me move on to that.
Could I just ask,
Yeah.
What's the basic elevation range of the control area?
I don't know off the top of my head.
We can get that information.
It's
from
all
Jamie.
low elevation. I mean, it's not none of it is high elevation.
So it's at least probably, I would be guessing,
We can
12
get-
to 1,500 feet.
We can get that information for Jamie.
Yeah.
But it's not
Whitman
under-
Pond, bog.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to get that information. It is some of the lower elevation stuff that we have. So it's a pretty good size area to have a control area. Hey, Mr. Mike Waddell coming in from Gorham.
lived in a pretty rough neighborhood. This is the second year in a row I nearly died in the freaking highways.
Where's Sally?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. You forgot, okay.
Listen, after last year, I don't think she ever wants to get in a car with me.
You don't have chains?
Huh?
You don't have chains?
I needed them, but no.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here safe and sound. Any other questions on the softwood control areas? We can get you a copy of the map, if that would.
Yeah.
You didn't get a copy of the map? That was.
Well, I missed the trip.
Jamie, I've sent you that map before, but I'll send it to you again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, do that because it'll have the elevations on it, and that's pretty important.
That map's been around for several years.
Okay, here's where Tracy Boulevard gave us a presentation about the camp lot licenses, how this works, and what people have to pay, how they monitor it. I learned a tremendous amount. Of course, most of the camps are up by Nash Block, about 60 of the camps. And Elizabeth, where's your camp on?
So we're in Nash, we're just shy of 10 miles.
Okay, you got a long drive up there.
Yes.
Okay. The leasing program, of course, as it says here, originated with the state's predecessor and was acquired in 1988. So I believe there was 104 camps originally, and they're down at 91 right now. Questions on that? So after lunch, we had a really good presentation by Kyle Lombard, who's the State Forest Health Specialist. We're talking about spruce budworm and the number of spruce budworm traps that Kyle has up in Nash Stream. Of course, these are the spruce and fir areas. Spruce budworm particularly attacks fir, balsam fir trees, and so there's a lot of concern about that. The last real bad outbreak was in the early 1980s, and it really ravaged the area. So if you look at a map of northern New England, you can see that Quebec and over into the maritime provinces here have a lot of spruce budworm. But apparently the spruce budworm is not heading south into our area right around here. So that's a good thing right now. But there's some differences in bird populations and other things as a result of the spruce budworm outbreak up in Quebec in particular. And of course, we had a northern red belly snake, and that was your son, I think, that
My daughter.
Your daughter,
Yep.
okay, your daughter picked it up, and we took some pictures of it, put it on iNaturalist, and released it as we were talking. So that is the presentation on our field trip. It was so successful that we've been talking about having another session up there next summer, and hopefully we can do that. All right.
Couple of questions.
Yes, let me turn the lights on.
I'm just curious. You mentioned both the moose study and the budworm study. And I'm just wondering what sort of the current status of what you're finding is about.
None of those people that can answer that question are here. There's no fish and game biologists here, and Kyle didn't come up, so we can. If you want to,
So, I mean, the spruce budworm, though, I mean, he was just saying that populations aren't spiking, that they're not finding that populations are spiking right now in northern New Hampshire.
We found some in the traps that he had, but they were not at very high concentrations.
Right. Well, I mean, they're native here, so
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
that's not the issue. The issue is the spike.
Right.
And so I'm just curious if anybody remembers anything about the moose.
That project is still underway in the Northeast. It's Vermont has it too, Maine. And so these camera studies are going to be a number of years before they can finish monitoring what's going on with that. I mean, it's ideas on what's doing it, but we don't have solid numbers. And Jake's not here to answer that question. Okay. All right, let me take a look at the agenda here. Let's see, it's timber harvest, road maintenance activities.
member.
That would be good because we have an election coming up.
Got through one.
I know, we barely.
Should be able to decide on that tonight if we have a quorum.
Yeah.
It's gonna take us a week to count.
Is it gonna be a tie? Oh, great. One of those guys.
Absentee.
Okay, I just want to give everyone an update on what's going on currently in Nash Stream in terms of road work and forest management. This is sort of a quick update.
Hello, Sally.
Hi. Sorry, I left insufficient time to get everything from it, and there's snow flurries and someone driving 20 miles an hour. Sorry about that.
No excuses for being late.
No excuse, I just explain it. Is someone sitting here?
Nope, you
Okay, great.
You beat Mike Waddell by, or Mike beat you
Oh,
by
diving
2
up.
minutes.
Really? It's like we carpooled again or something.
Yeah.
I just want to give an update.
Nearly died in
Bye
the same
here.
place
All
as
right.
last year. Oh, yeah.
So in terms of road work, during the summer, we did do some significant road work. If anyone has driven up the road, they will see giant boulders. So, we were able to put some money in towards reditching sections of the road, replacing some culverts, and what we're calling like popping rocks. Okay, there were huge boulders that we were able to get out of the road this year, which had made sections of the road really, really rough. So the road right now is in really nice condition. It's probably the best it's been in a very long time. So we're really pleased we were able to get that work done. Unfortunately, we were not able to do our annual mowing this year. That wasn't because of funding reasons necessarily. There was just a change in the way that the state is able to do rental agreements, and so because of that process, I wasn't able to get the paperwork done to get it done this fall. So, but we will hopefully be doing it next summer. So that's just an update on that. And then just to pick this is a map of Nash Stream. I'm not sure why I just put it in there. Fun. Okay, so for our winter forest management operations, this past winter we had 3 successful sales, and you guys had already heard. Last year I presented on what was upcoming, so I just wanted to give you some, mostly just pictures, update on the photo on the timber sales. So in compartment 4. Which is along the Jimmy Cole Brook Road or Amos Emery Road, whichever one you want to call it. We had the Cunningham logging was in there this winter, and they did a really nice job. Here's a picture of this low one. We actually did work with Fish and Game, and we did a sort of a beach management area. We were trying to, which is contrary to what most people think of, but we were trying to encourage beach for wildlife. So there was a small section of beach, so we kind of did this really nice beach thinning, and we're releasing some of the beach to try to encourage them. As well as we just were doing some other group selection as well in there. Compartment 18, which is just before the east branch of Nash Stream. We did another harvest in there, Eve Marquis cut, and we did group selection with some tending. And then compartment 22, and this was a holdover from previous year that didn't get cut. So normally we don't always have 3 sales, but last year, remember, I don't know if you guys all recall that we did have 1 sale that was unable to get cut the previous 2 years, and so it sort of got held over. And so this is up in compartment 22, which is north of the bog, and so they came in above Nash Stream Bog. And this was some softwood management, and we did kind of smaller groups in there, and we're encouraging softwood regeneration. And there's mixed wood in there as well. Really nice spruce in there, and so we were really trying to target those areas that were already regenerated and to try to get some new regeneration started. So smaller openings in there. I just wanted to talk about a upcoming / current sale, you guys haven't heard about this yet, compartment 6. And I'm just gonna jump ahead real quick to show you where it is on the map. So this is the lower southeast, way lower southeast corner. If anyone knows where the Stark dump is, it's kind of right across from the old Stark dump and off of Bell Hill Road. And so this is I'm just gonna say planned harvest, but it is currently going on right now, actually. Compartment 6, just to give you a little history or background, it's 1,700 acres. The timber sale area is 160 acres, and the project area is kind of cut in two. There's an eastern portion and a western portion. It's broken up by McGregor Brook in the middle. And so the eastern portion has never been harvested since the state acquired it, but the western portion had been harvested in 1997 to 98. This is currently right now like a fall harvest, and because we haven't had a meeting in a year, we didn't present this to you guys to hear about. And we spent this spring and summer laying this forest management operation out. So we marked it and then we put it out to bid during the summer, and it had a portion of fall ground, so they were able to get in there and they're harvesting it right now. And so here's a map, a close-up map of it, and you can see that McGregor Brook runs right through the middle. This is the Coas Trail, which is also an old woods road. So the Coas Trail sort of runs on an old woods road through there. And then this eastern section of the property is more softwood, and this western section is mixed wood and more hardwood. So due to the way the property and the stand types are, we're doing uneven age management over the entire project, but we have two different sizes in terms of our group openings. In the hardwood, the openings are a little bit larger, and the softwood, they're very small, so 1/4 acre or less, really trying to just kind of get a little bit of light in there and to regenerate some more softwood and released regeneration that's already there. It actually looks really, really nice in there right now. So overall, there was 28 acres of openings over the entire project area, and then obviously they're trying to protect McGregor Brook, so there's an uncut buffer along the brook. And here's some pictures of the harvest that's going on right now.
There's no name.
What was it?
We were just commenting on the name of the brook.
Oh, yes. Named after Bob McGregor. He named the brook. He was our old regional forester a long time ago, if anybody remembers. So for this upcoming winter, there will be no impacts to our trails. Our snowmobile trails will be open, all of them will be open, and there will be no harvesting in Nash Stream this winter. This harvest that is going on right now, because of the beautiful fall weather, we've really been able to get most of it cut, and so it's not really going to impact any of the snowmobile trails this winter. So, and then there will be no other sales on the property until, next winter. So we're planning right now for upcoming projects, and so Todd and I are in the planning stages of a couple other areas in Nash Stream right now, but those will not be, this summer we'll be doing the field work for those, and so they will not be being harvested until next winter, 2024. And so our forest inventory is ongoing, and it certainly had a few hiccups the last couple years. We were unable to hire somebody during COVID, and then we were only able to hire one staff person in 2021. And then 2022, we were unable to hire anybody, and that had nothing to do with funding. That was just we couldn't find anybody. We reached out to all of the universities several times and just could not find people. So it was crazy, but we were unable to hire anybody. So we're hoping this summer we're going to get postings out early, and we're hoping we can hire 2 people for the summer, because that really is how we help us get our forest inventory done.
What do you pay for those positions?
What do we? I mean, I think it's about $15 an hour. As I just said, how much do you pay?
Would you like sauce on that? I use $15 an hour at McDonald's.
Yeah. I'm just saying, the state of New
Oh, I know.
Hampshire, generally speaking, is behind in their pay. No secret to any of us.
You deal with it at the municipal level, I just, is
Yeah.
discouraging.
Well, you know, the thing is though, I like to think that a college student would look at this as an opportunity. And yes, it may pay the same as McDonald's, but I would like to think that they're gonna have a learning experience and get something out of it versus
Be outside.
scooping ice cream.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we were unable to hire anyone. It was very disappointing. We're hoping for better luck this year.
That should say 2000.
I was wondering.
Oh, not 32.
It's like, wow, we're just gonna try and take it.
Maybe the excerpt for it.
And that's basically all my updates. Any questions? Lots of questions. Patrick, I saw your hand hop up first.
I mean, I know what you're referring to, but for those non-foresters, group selections with tending, what does tending mean?
Sure. So, I mean, that's kind of what we say. Generally speaking, it's a thinning in between those groups, and we try to look at those areas where the quality is good, that we can, you know, thin essentially and kind of put some growth on those existing stems, and taking the poorer quality out. But in some of these areas that we're doing group selection, the point of group selection, and I think I've probably gone over this before, but it's to sort of break up those age classes. So we're going in and putting groups in now, and then in 20 years when we go back in, we'll put groups elsewhere. And over time, we're creating that, you know, multiple age classes over time on a sort of a landscape level. And so when we do tending in between them, we're not going to do necessarily tending every entry, but we may do tending the first entry, and we're just trying to increase growth on those existing stems, sort of in the matrix, the not cut areas of the, you know, in between the groups. And but we can only do it in an area where the quality is good enough. That's why we don't necessarily do it everywhere. If the quality is poor, then sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense to thin those areas. So, yes, Chris.
Is there any monitoring of the ability of the forest to sequester carbon?
You're saying how do we monitor?
Are you doing it?
Are we doing it? Currently, I mean, we're not specifically monitoring the forest's ability to sequester carbon. Will, can you?
So what we have in the 2017 plan is an allowable harvest, and so we look at the growth rates. So what the forest is growing per acre per year, and by ensuring that we don't harvest more than growth, we're adding growth, and we're storing additional carbon, we're sequestering additional carbon. Certainly through all the work we've done over the decades, those trees that are now in the 30 to 40 year age range are sequestering carbon faster than the older trees, and the older trees that we don't manage are storing more carbon. So we have a good balance there. As Dave mentioned, there's over 18,000 acres that we don't manage at all, so that's stored carbon that won't be touched. We do have a very comprehensive study that we worked with FEMC out of Vermont on another large property that we have in the southwestern part of the state, Pisgah State Park. And I'd be happy to share the results of that study with you, but it definitely showed we have a net carbon gain on that property, which is 13,000 acres, managed probably even more intensively than Nash Stream is. But I think that those results are pretty comparable, even though you're looking at pine oak maple type down there versus northern hardwood and softwood up here. But I think overall it's the similar type of management going on both those properties. So I think what we learned on that study at Pisgah would be relevant to Nash Stream.
So I've been.
And we also have Matt Kelly, UNH Extension from Cheshire County. He's a specialist in carbon sequestration and storage, and he's done an amazing study on Cheshire County. I know it's the other corner of the state, but we can get that PowerPoint available, and you can learn a lot about his findings. You know, some of the species of trees are different than we have, but it really points out where trees are taking up a lot of carbon, and where some of the older trees, at what point do they, you know, stop storing a lot of carbon.
And one final point, I think, Jamie, you might remember this when we had Ken Damaris put some CFI plots out here for us, and we looked at the specific growth rates, not just FIA data, but specifically what was going on here at Nash Stream, and he talked about when you can actually hit a tipping point if you don't manage the forest at all, where you have mortality, and that mortality can actually start, you can start losing more carbon from that mortality if you don't do management. You remember having that conversation with Ken here?
Oh, I remember his presentation.
Yeah,
that was about
you
4
and Ken
years
had a
ago.
pretty good back and forth over that, and that was a point that Ken was trying to make there, is that an unmanaged forest over time will have a substantial amount of mortality.
Yeah, well, I mean, the research that people like Keaton and others like that are doing is showing that if your goal is to optimize carbon sequestration, then unmanaged is the way to go. The mortality does release carbon and also is not sequestering and adding more, but the release is pretty slow. It's a slow decomposition, so it's not like it died, boom, all the carbon is up in the
Did that
atmosphere.
factor in the forest products that are tied up into long-lived products that are keeping that carbon stored?
Yes, but when you account for the wood that's been the waste wood, you know, you square the thing out, you plane it, you leave the branches, all that stuff. I think they're coming up with, and then you make a very fine product that then lasts hopefully hundreds of years. You're talking about maybe 10 or 15% of the tree. So when you cut the tree, the other 85% is available for release, and depending if you burn in a biomass boiler, basically, boom, it's up in the air. So yes, it's great that that these things are long lasting, but the waste wood is considerable for the trees that made these products.
So given global warming, wouldn't it be better not to be patting yourself in the back that you haven't been losing, but to stop logging and then have a gain in carbon?
Well, there's lots of people who think that that's not necessarily the best way either. It's kind of having a mix of these older forests with younger forests in the landscape, because the younger forests do provide benefits for wildlife and for other things, and we are able to get local wood products. And there's this thought that if you're not having sustainably created products that are made here in the U.S., it's called leakage, and it's just being cut somewhere else in the world. So, there's lots of debate about this, and I don't know if we need to all go back and forth about it this evening, but.
I would love to get Matt Kelly from UNH Extension to take a look at Nash Stream and see if he might be able to come up with some ideas and answers. I mean, he's specifically trained in that.
It might even be worth having him come and just give a talk in general on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
I think it'd be really beneficial, and I bet we'd get a fair amount of the public that would be interested in that.
It's an evolving topic, and it's a controversial topic, and it's an interesting topic. So.
Yeah.
So another issue, the Forest Service lawyers noted that there might be an issue with Forest Service permission necessary for, I think it was the logging roads. Has anybody followed up on that?
What was the question?
Forest Service permission for the logging roads? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that.
I was asking the Forest Service, shouldn't you guys be regulating ATVs? And when they looked over the easement deed, they said, yes, on through roads, there should be no ATVs. And by the way, on this easement, maybe we should be...
You're talking about the OHRVs.
No. As well as they looked at the easement, the lawyer's comment was maybe there's probably some logging road issues that maybe we should be looking at. And they decided not to look at them, but you guys should pursue that. You should know about it, and Sarah Sturt should have told you about it if you didn't.
We have received no word from the U.S. Forest Service on that.
Yeah, I'm not
They
aware.
decided not to look at it, but
If they do reach out to us, we will respond.
from your own side, if it's not a permitted use for you guys, we
It's a
would want to know
permitted
about
use.
it.
I mean, absolutely, forest management was one of the reasons that the property was purchased. That was one of the main reasons why the property was purchased, to practice sustainable forest management. So it's absolutely a permitted use on the property.
It's right here in the plan.
I'll send it to you if you don't have it.
Yes, Jamie.
Any other questions? questions?
Was it for me?
Yeah, it is. I wanted, I think it was in the northern sector of the Nash Stream track, you did softwoods, and there were some nice pictures of some softwood lots. I'm just wondering if you have a sense of sort of the approximate ages of that stand.
I do have the ages of that stand.
Not memorized?
Not memorized.
We can follow up on that.
Yeah,
Too,
we do. When we are doing these projects, of course, we figure out the ages of the trees. And, you know, yes.
That was inventory, but.
I was gonna say around 80 is my guess, 90, but
And that's my concern is that one of the things, and again, it's not just Bill Keaton, but folks like him are saying that when you get trees of 80, 90 years, they're not only sequestering a lot, you know, fairly high rate of sequestration, but they're pretty big and storing a lot. And we really should be treating trees that have matured to say 80 years, I think is what they're basically the rough cutoff, as during this climate crisis, since we've got to get things down today, yesterday, now, not next century, we should not be touching trees over about 80 years. And so that's my concern and the other part of my concern is as you're turning this into more of an uneven aged forest by cutting a little here, and then coming back, what, in 10 or 15 years and cutting a little here and a little there?
yeah, 15, 20.
Yeah, okay. What percentage of the managed forest area is going to be 80 or more years old when you get done with this?
You mean when we finish an entire rotation is what you're asking?
Yeah, when you and I aren't around to talk about it.
So it would be about 20% of the managed area. So remember, there's at least 18,000 acres that are going to be
Right, no, I understand, but there are
natural succession. But in the managed area, if you consider you have 5 entries over 100-year rotation, I'm using 100 as an average because we do say 140 in the plan, but in other areas we say 80. So it depends on where you are on the property. It could be anywhere from 80 to 40. Just throwing 100 out there as an average. So you have 5 entries over that rotation, so it'd be about 20% would be in that highest age class, correct?
Yes, and there's obviously always areas within a, you know, put a boundary around something, a timber sale area that we're not managing. You know, there's stream buffers that we're leaving that are just not being managed. There's other areas that we can't get to or it doesn't make sense to manage. So there's always areas within a square project area that there's uncut areas that will not be harvested.
And the other part of that too is you say when we get through a whole rotation, you're assuming that we'll have treated all the managed acreage, and that's really a not to exceed in the management, but we'll never reach that. If you look at our harvest rates right now, what we're doing, we would have to probably quadruple at least what we're doing annually to even come close to completing managing the entire manageable acreage in one rotation. So we won't ever get there.
Yeah, I guess my immediate concern over, say, the next 25 to 30 years is the degree to which the Nash Stream, which admittedly is a 40,000 acre parcel in a 6 million acre state, et cetera, so it's a small part, but setting an example of we really want to err on the side of caution with trees over 80 years and optimize our carbon sequestration until we get this climate crisis under control. I mean, one reason maybe the budworms aren't coming down is because the Acadian forest is going north, and we're going to lose it if we don't, in 100 years or so. If we don't reverse this climate crisis, this is really about as scary a thing as I can think of. And so I guess what I'm saying is, that yes, the forest was bought. A big part of it was to maintain timber management. 35 years later, in fact, it was the summer of the big climate heat wave of 1988 when we really woke up to the crisis. 35 years later, I don't think it's bad faith for us to sort of revisit and say, how are we stacking up against the real crisis that's urgent that we deal with now?
I understand what you're saying, Jamie. I think that Nash Stream really is still being managed responsibly, and
I agree.
What I was gonna say was, is also though, conservatively, I mean, we're really, really not cutting anywhere near what we could be cutting on the property. It is already being managed very conservatively. I mean, yes, I know you would like to see us cut no trees, but.
Well, at least no trees over 80 years.
Any
But
other,
but
we can't solve it tonight.
Well, yeah, I know, I agree, and I think that we talked about rotation ages in the plan, and where, and how long we desire to grow certain forest types, and I think we have to stick to the plan. I understand what you're saying, but, you know, a lot of times, an 80 or a 90-year-old tree, you know, we're gonna grow that out, especially in the hardwoods, we're looking at 140 years, so we're gonna
Well, not
continue
even
to grow
that,
those.
but let's just say this 80, I'm just gonna give you an example of this 80-year-old area. We just might be going in and putting the first entry right now when they're 80 years old. So by the time we get around to 100 years later, treating the entire area, some of those trees are going to be significantly older. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you understand? They're gonna be 100 years from now. So some of those trees are gonna be almost 200 years old by the time we're going to getting around to completing what we call a rotation. So.
If we ever get there.
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of those trees, if they're younger than 80 years old, they're immature. They're not ready to be
Right.
harvested.
Right.
We wanna, there's still opportunity there for them to grow and to
Store
increase in
carbon.
value. Store carbon, sequester carbon. And one final thing, I know Dave wants to move on, we need to move, we've gone past our time here, but I think it's fair to say that, you know, Maggie and Todd practice good forest management on this property, and good forest management really is good carbon management and good climate management. So if you're doing good forest management, you are doing good carbon management, and you are benefiting the climate by the work they're doing. Could you go to the extreme and maybe do better? Yeah, you could go to the ultimate extreme and not cut at all, but we can't do that. You know, we're charged
I was
with
gonna say, there's
managing
lots
the
of
property.
varying opinions of whether or not cutting trees is really better. I know a slew of scientists and ecologists who think that that's not the best way to go. So there's both sides of this, Jamie, that it's not just, it's not so cut and dry and easy. It's not a simple solution.
And I think, you know, this plan has a, you know, we talked about it having a 10-year shelf life, and it was completed in 2017. So it won't be too long here before we have to open it back up and look at revisions, and certainly we'll have there'll be more data and more science on the climate and on what the best type of forest management for climate change is, and we can incorporate those things into the plan. I mean, this plan didn't even used to have a climate change chapter, and you know, you urged us and goaded us into including it in the last revision, and that was a good addition. I'm glad we did it, and certainly you'll have more input when we open the plan and revise it again.
Okay, I'm gonna have to move us along and invite Clint Savage to give us an update on the west side and Kelsey Notch.
Well, good evening, everybody. I don't have a PowerPoint like everybody else has, but I'll give you some updates. So this summer we did go in on the Kelsey Notch, on the Bordeaux end, and we did some grading on the Bordeaux Road itself, and we also brought our rock crusher in, and we used the rock crusher on the road to put some material back in the road. We graded the road and stuff, and that was done in mid-July. We went and visited in August when we did our tour,
August 9th, yeah.
and everything was in good shape down there on the west side end and the Bordeaux Trail. We did put counters out in Bordeaux down on that end. So last year, for usage on the Bordeaux Trail, that trail opened on May 23rd, and it was closed on December 15th. And our counts for last year, for 2021, was 1,231 ATVs that went through the Bordeaux Trail. Currently this year, we don't have that data yet because the trail is still open. So I don't have that update. That will be done on the 15th of December when the trail closes. I'm expecting the usage to be probably a little lower this year on the Bordeaux Trail than last year. There was logging out on private property that abuts Nash Stream State Forest, and so they had asked that we close that area so that ATVs do not go through the timber harvest out on the private property. So the Bordeaux Trail, well, actually they closed their property during the timber harvest, so that didn't allow for the ATVs to come down or OHRVs to get into Nash Stream. So that section was closed for maybe 6 weeks, something like that, September into mid-October. Let's see, Kelsey Notch. Obviously Maggie and Todd, or Maggie, had mentioned that there was some issues this summer with being able to contracts through vendors. So unfortunately, we were not able to hire contractors to go in and do any maintenance within Kelsey Notch this summer. So some of our concerns that we had last year did not get addressed. For this summer, we had all intentions to do that, but with the process that came about in mid-July, allowing us not to hire any contractors at this point until we resolved some of the issues, had to stop. So we weren't able to get any contractors to do that, and we were short-staffed this summer. My employees were out, so unfortunately, some of the maintenance that we were supposed to get done this season has not been done. So we're going to plan on trying to get on that first thing next spring. The local ATV club did have some money left over in their grants this year, or out of their coffers, and hopefully, if the weather permits, they will be able to go in and dress up a few things this fall if the weather is going to allow them to do that. So for Kelsey Notch this year, well, last year on what we'll call Kelsey Notch North, so if we're looking at standing at the kiosk up there, the trail corridor B that runs up through to the Millsfield riding area, last year was 12,293 OHRVs that used that section of trail, and then this year there was 10,167 that went through there. So there's 2,126 machines less this summer than last year on that particular trail. Kelsey Notch C, or Corridor C North, going out of Kelsey Notch. We had a counter issue last year, so we weren't able to get the data on that on 2021. This year, 2022, we had 11,035 go north. And then Kelsey Notch Corridor C for the season of 2021, we had another technical difficulties, and the counter only counted up until November 11th, but at that time in 2021 there was 4,845 OHRVs going south out of Kelsey Notch down towards Columbia, and this year that particular same location we had 4,194. So that's 651 less ATVs again going south. We did notice that there was a decrease in OHRV use this summer generally through the whole area in the North Country. But those are what we had for numbers in Kelsey Notch. So,
Glenn, how long have you had counters out?
This will be the second season that we started monitoring Kelsey Notch and the Bordeaux. No, down on the in Nash Stream itself. Just checking my notes here. I think that's about all I have. What was transpired over for
Any issues, law enforcement issues, erosion problems, blowouts of any kind?
No, I think overall, I think when we did our monitor, our stuff this fall, obviously there was usage on there, but there was no environmental issues that was noticed. There's stuff that we certainly need to address, that we plan to address, but there was nothing that was really significant. So.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a top number? Is there a top number beyond which you say we have to shut down the traffic because that's too many ATVs?
I am not aware of a number yet. No, I'm not.
So could I suggest that the committee set a number beyond which you say this is too impacts. There's nothing that says at this point we have to stop the ATV. And a number would be covering everything, because they're not measuring fragmentation of habitat, they're not measuring the noise effect on the animals, not measuring dust, herbicides, nothing's being measured. The numbers are being measured, but no one's putting a limit, so if you set a limit on the numbers, that would be your first control. Second question is that a road? Kelsey Notch through road, it's a road, is it not? It's a through road?
A through road?
Yep.
I would say that is not a through road, no.
So the ATVs can't go from one side to the other? I mean, it's a through road for Ride the Wild, it's a major crossing.
So it is, it is a trail, not a road.
Why is it a trail, not a road? What's the distinction there?
A road is more for motor vehicle use and was designed and built for motor vehicles. And this is a trail, so some of it is, some of that section of area is road, logging road, and some of it is trail.
It's passable through by a vehicle, yes? Four-wheel drive?
If someone so chose to do so, yes.
And the ATVs?
Would they make it out?
But it's not a legal use.
It's not legal use.
ATVs, it's a through road for the ATVs.
It's a through trail.
What? For the ATVs, they go from one side to the other.
Right, it's a through trail, yes.
So can you guys come up with a legal distinction between road and trail?
We could probably come up with a I don't know if we have quite a definition for that.
Well, it's central to the easement and whether the ATVs are allowed there. According to the Forest Service, if it's a through road, they can't be there.
Those trails are constructed according to the state BMPs, so they follow those trail best management practices to meet those trail criteria. So they're not built as roads, they're built as trails, which is there is a difference.
They look like roads, and the trucks are on it, and in the inspection reports, there's vehicles out there on it.
Those are probably our vehicles that are on them.
That's right.
But that property those areas are gated off for motor vehicle use. It's not open
For highway.
It's not for highway motor vehicle use through there.
But in terms of the infrastructure, what makes it not a road? If it looks like a road and it's been improved to the degree that it went from being a snowmobile trail to being a road, yes, you might gate it off to traffic some of the time, but in terms of infrastructure, what makes it not a road? Because you just don't want to call it a road?
Well, I think a road is basically, if we call it a road, then it's open to motor vehicle traffic. And where a trail is technically not open to motor vehicle traffic. Lucy?
Is it possible for a logging truck to drive from Bungay all the way out through Kelsey Notch to, where does it come out? By Millsfield, somewhere out there, Millsfield.
A logging truck, I would say no.
The logging truck can go a good part of the way.
Because some of that in Kelsey Notch was designed for logging. That was a logging road that was for logging trucks and for when they did the timber harvest there. Right. And then after that, it is a snowmobile. It was a snowmobile trail and OHRV trail at that point.
Well, 2 or 3 years ago when I hiked through, I hiked across the Coas Trail and came out there, I was like, understand that my father was a forester, and I grew up traveling on logging roads in Northern California, summer sabbatical, and they looked pretty much like the Kelsey Trail.
So
Kelsey Notch Trail.
Yeah.
And then I came out on that and I'm like, this can't be the Kelsey Notch Trail because this is a road. And then I walked down the road and there was a local guy out there with his huge loader making a turnaround so he could get his logging trucks out of there.
So you were probably on private property at that point.
I had just come off the trail.
Which would be private property. That is on Wagner's property.
Well,
If you're
that
up on
may
the
be.
top of there, So so Wagner's, that section up through there has been improved for Wagner for timber management. So
is
yeah,
it-
so that section up through there is a logging road for Wagner's for timber management.
So where does it cross Nash Stream Forest? Beyond that?
It would be
East of that?
the Co-Wash Trail would be, I would say west, let me see, west, right? Of that on
Matt, you're
the,
gonna get a map.
Well, so if it's west of that, that road that I saw comes through there. That logging access road for Wagner Woodlands comes through there. The guy was logging access road, whatever. I mean, that's a road. That's
right,
a road.
he came in from, to do that, he did not come in through the state forest. He came in off from, in Millsfield out on that area, and then Wagner, or the private timber harvest company up there, had improved that trail for timber management.
So where do
Because
you
that
guys-
used to be a small corridor trail through there at
I
one point,
understand.
and then the timber company that owns that went in and improved that and made it into a road so they could do access timber
So
harvesting.
where it comes through the Nash Stream Forest, what's the legal arrangement with Wagner?
As far as for us,
Yeah, I mean,
so we have an agreement with Wagner for OHRV use on Wagner's property on
no, but I'm
areas.
talking about the construction of the trail or the logging road. I would call it logging road.
They did that themselves.
No, but that's allowed apparently.
It's on their property, yes, so it's
Well,
allowed.
where it comes through Nash Stream, which
They
is,
didn't come into Nash Stream.
but I thought you just said it was west of there. I asked you.
The Co-Wash Trail is west of, I'm sorry, it would be east, right? It would be east of.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Matt, he's gonna pull up a map and might
Yeah.
help this
Yeah.
conversation.
Sorry, I'm
So,
working on that.
while you're working on that, what is the arrangement where between the state and Wagner, for instance, in this case, when they want to go through the state forest or the Nash Stream Forest, where it is tacitly supposed to be a trail, not a logging road?
They don't truck out that way. Wagner doesn't. They come out as far as their property line and go back out that way. They don't come down into Nash Stream State Forest to go out.
This is the Kelsey Notch Trail, this is the ATV Trail, this is the Co-Wash Trail, so it comes off of our property.
So the green block up by, right there, that's,
So the red outline is Nash Stream.
okay.
So the Co-Wash Trail comes here, it doesn't connect onto this until it's on Nash Stream on Wagner's property. Does that make sense?
It's actually east, that's the east side.
Yeah, it's east, not west. Yeah.
Sorry.
Jamie?
Is that clear now? With the map, does that help?
Well, I'm a little fuzzy on
You
it.
could blow it up a little bit, but.
Yeah,
Go
so the
fast,
green is
slowly
Nash
maybe.
Stream, the Nash Stream Forest, and the,
red line.
The red line.
The red line is the boundary.
right,
red line
and
is the
what
boundary.
comes through it, there on the right,
So
diagonally is,
This is the ATV Trail.
okay. And where's the that's the ATV trail, which is also what I would call a logging road?
Sure. Yep, well, I mean, there's sections of it that are a logging road, right? But the beginning of it was an old logging road, and then there's sections of it that are not. And
Well,
then
I've walked in from Bungay. Can you show me where it starts in Bungay?
Where what starts?
The trail, quote
The
unquote.
west side.
Where it starts in Bungay. You come through a gate in
Yeah,
Bungay,
the
you
red
come
line.
through private land off Bungay Road, then you walk up the hill
So
and
they
where
down
does
off
that
from
start?
the beginning of Kelsey Notch
Where
Road,
did-
Peggy.
Top B.
Clint,
Here?
Right.
Yeah.
you came in from this way?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in regards to the counter and numbers, and so this is quarter C south. So this is where you Bungay Road would be down
Okay,
here.
right.
So you would have walked up this
Okay.
way.
That up Long Hill, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a kiosk here.
Uh-huh.
This would be quarter C north.
There's
This
an
way.
intersection that goes off to the north there.
Yeah, and this would take you, and it would go north and go up to, out towards Diamond Peak Store, out back to Route 26. This is quarter C, this is quarter B, so this is all still on Nash Stream State Forest, and at this point, we're leaving, and it leaves Nash Stream and turns into private landowner.
Okay, so as far as, I haven't been where your pen is.
Mhm.
I have, well, maybe I have, I don't know, somewhere I pick up the co-op trail, but
The co-op
everything-
trail's right here.
Yeah, everything that I saw, that coming from Bungay across, right through the middle of Nash Stream Forest was a dirt road, a logging road. I would never in a million years have called it a trail. You guys call it a trail, I don't call it a trail. And I don't know exactly where that loader was, but
If you come off the co-op trail, the loader was probably over
Well, it
in
probably
this
was, but-
in this vicinity, and they access their property from over in this direction here. So when the paper company's over in here, they come in this direction, West Branch Clear Stream, so they come in this way to
That may
access their
be.
property. So then when they harvest this, they come here.
that may
And
be,
this
but
is as
there
far
was
as they go.
absolutely, I could take my Volkswagen, if it weren't for the ATV traffic, which is, you know, churn things up, I could drive my Volkswagen station wagon up that road and all the way up through that, all the way across that boundary line to the right there, and I don't know where I would end up, out in Millsfield somewhere.
Yeah.
I would have absolutely no problem, I wouldn't need a four-wheel drive vehicle, I wouldn't need, you know, that's a road, it's a good, if it's not turned up,
So
good
it's-
solid logging road, and
so
call
this
it
is-
trail is just ridiculous.
So this area here was all snowmobile trail, and this is all snowmobile trail. So in order for us to be able to do maintenance for summer use, we have, this has got gravel on it. So maybe now that's why you're looking, you know, this was a snowmobile trail up through here. And then in order to do maintenance and stuff, we put gravel on that. So maybe that's because of seeing crushed gravel on that road for us to be able to do maintenance. Maybe that's why you're distinguishing it as a road, because it has crushed gravel on it. But technically back down in here, in this vicinity, I believe is where the logging yard actually was when they were done logging.
The
this
first section of
area.
it was built as a road. Alan Befilier
When that property, prior to us
created
owning it,
sections of it for logging before the state owned a portion of it.
right, yeah, we bought this section here later, the state did from Alan Befilier, and this had been logged, and there was a logging road probably up into this vicinity here. This was all snowmobile trail, and then it was upgraded, and stuff for maintenance purposes for snowmobiling and ATV. But, so yes, it may look like a road because it has gravel on it, but in theory, that was not built for truck traffic or anything else.
But it does point out the need that we need a definition of a road and a trail, OHRV trail, and I think we can get that. Pat,
Could I just say that these are, obviously these were old, many of these were old logging roads at one time, became snowmobile trails. But is it safe to say that the defining characteristic of these is that they may look like logging roads, but only OHRV traffic is allowed on them? They're defined by their use, not necessarily by their width
Right,
and their road
right.
surface.
They're defined by how much they've been developed, because the larger they are, the more obstacle you have to the wildlife, the more dust there is, the more material you're trucking in there every year. All the loads of gravel that have gone in there, that's all on the record. It's not just a little bit of gravel you threw on there. Does BOT have a position on global warming and the appropriateness of recreational fossil fuel burning?
I would have to defer to the chief on that.
We don't have a formal position on that.
No position on global warming and fossil fuel recreational burning to have a good time.
That's not what we're charged with doing.
You're not charged with having a position that might allow the land to survive.
So,
We're charged with maintaining
I-
trails.
I think I understand the concern, and I've heard it several times, but, we approved the plan, you guys are following the plan.
It's not your purview.
Actually it is, and it's an advisory committee, the committee advised, maybe not to your agreement, but the advice was taken, Cord agreed to a plan, we printed a plan, we have a plan. I don't see the benefit of every single agenda item becomes a worldwide discussion on global warming and other things. Because if you wanted to stop society as a whole, you would apply this metric across the board in private enterprise and no one would do anything.
It's right here, right now, Nash Stream Committee
And-
ATVs, that's it.
And
That's just one
I got
thing.
that, so we have a plan. we have a plan, are we following the plan that we all agreed to and that court agreed to? I think that's the important thing.
The plan can be changed when it becomes inappropriate.
Absolutely, it can be changed.
That's what I'm suggesting, the plan needs to be changed.
Jamie?
CORD required after 2016 that you monitor, and I'm wondering, is there going to be a formal 2022 monitoring report?
Absolutely. Yep.
That will have fish and game and all that?
Yes.
Can anybody tell us anything about that? I realize.
Sure, I'm in the middle of working on the report. We've already done our monitoring for the year. It is due to CORD by December 15th. It has to go around to review. It is close to being done, Jamie. And it has to go to review, like, to, you know, the fish and game staff and then our internal staff, just, you know, drafting, a draft program. So it will be done and presented to CORD, which at that point it will be made public at December 15th, or maybe, you know, we'll probably get it to CORD before December 15th, but that is when it's due to CORD. So.
Yeah, my problem is that if we're going to give informed advice and we don't have the report, our advice isn't very informed. And I would rather that we met after the report is available publicly so that we can have studied it and then have thoughtful questions about it instead of just relying on a presentation with no paper.
I mean, I understand that. We always have our meetings in November. This is, you know, the CORD report is a fairly new thing the last couple of years. We've always had our meetings, our annual meetings in November. So
well, actually, you've had them in June as late as 2019.
When there were some years where we've had more than one meeting a year, but on years when we only have one meeting, it's usually a November meeting.
Well,
So we've had multiple meetings when we were doing the plan revision. Maggie's correct, the meetings usually in the fall. We can try better to have that report done sooner so that it's done in time for this. But Maggie's trying to, hang on, Jamie. Maggie's trying to meet the deadline that's established by CORD of December. It wasn't done to be.
No, I'm not. My beef isn't with
you
her.
or hide anything. The report will be available, and certainly we will take comments on it if you have comments.
No, my beef is not with you. You're stuck with a schedule, but if we're going to be effective, there are two problems with the timing right now of the monitoring in our meeting. One is that the monitoring, maybe not this year because of inability to get contractors, but in the past, monitoring has been done after fall maintenance, which basically means you're monitoring the maintenance and not the impacts of the use, and therefore true monitoring should occur before maintenance, and then if you want to come in afterwards and see how well the maintenance did, which is what you're doing now, I'm fine with that. And then the other thing is that we meet soon after Maggie and the others have got their report done, and I don't have a beef with her schedule. It's just I'm very frustrated that I don't have something that I could have studied over the last few days and then made some intelligent comments or
Understood, and we meet this time of year because of the time of year that kind of works for everybody. And so what I think we will try to do is get the report done sooner and have it to you by this November meeting versus trying to push the meeting further into winter and risking more people traveling during the snowy season of the year. So we'll try harder to get the report done sooner.
But also the real key for me is that the monitoring has to be done before the fall maintenance. It's just not monitoring.
So Maggie doesn't decide when the monitoring is done, and unfortunately she's been charged with writing a report. She should really be doing forest management work, but we will try to make that happen.
Again, my grief is not with Maggie, it's with a system
Jamie,
that...
I go out several times though on the trail. I don't just go out right after they've done their maintenance. I mean, every report we've ever written talks about when we've gone out other times throughout the year, has pictures sometimes from other times. I mean, I usually am taking pictures when I'm out there other times other than right after maintenance.
No, I understand that and appreciate that, but the formal monitoring, we're always told, comes after the maintenance, and I'm saying the formal monitoring should happen first. And the more you're out there, the better, obviously, but the formal assessment should be before the fall maintenance, and And I think that's really essential.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on to Sabrina? Okay, let's move on to Sabrina Stanwood from Natural Heritage Bureau, who has a slide program and a handout for us. I think
Jamie's
everyone has a
comment.
copy.
I'm sorry.
Lucy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know this gentleman. I'm sorry I arrived late. I got confused. But you're the head of CORD, is that right? No.
Greg Randy, I'm the chief of the Bureau of Trails.
Yeah, chief of the Bureau of Trails.
Correct.
Okay, so I know this may sound odd, but I was listening to a report on COP27 the other day. COP27, do you know what it is? You don't know what it is.
Climate change.
It's a global climate change conference. It's going on in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And there was an 11-year-old girl from India who said to an English rep there, "You're a minister. Why can't you address this and change it?" So I'm asking you, you're the head of this bureau. You don't seem to be concerned about climate change, but
I didn't say that.
well, you said that it was part of your job description, perhaps.
I'm not hired as a climate scientist.
Well, but you're the minister in this. So I'm just suggesting that in your position, maybe you could have the influence and the leadership to direct this department take it in that direction. Because New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire, who's put all their eggs in this internal combustion recreational basket, is, I think, really misguided. And if you want to be a real leader, I think you should address this. And thank you.
All right, let's move on to Sabrina Stanwood. Sabrina, could you just describe your role in Natural Heritage Bureau?
I'm going to introduce myself.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Stanwood. I'm the administrator with the Natural Heritage Bureau. We have staff now of 7.5 people, and I'm very happy about that. It's huge. I'm going to present on the work that my staff did this summer and some surveys. I recently had a cold and I don't want to spread it, so just let me know if you cannot understand what I'm saying.
There's a clicker here if you want.
This is fancy. I don't know about this, Dave.
Right button there.
Look at that. Okay, so the Natural Heritage Bureau is mandated by the New Hampshire Native Plant Protection Act, RSA 217A, and we work with landowners to develop and recommend measures to conserve New Hampshire's native plant species and exemplary natural communities. And essentially our goal is to help protect New Hampshire's biodiversity by collecting and analyzing data on the status, location, and distribution of New Hampshire's rare native plants or declining populations, as well as natural communities. We are predominantly a self-funded bureau, so if you have a moose plate, thank you. A very small portion of that actually funds this work, including the Nash Stream work. Oh, I can remember, it's fancy. So, the chair contacted us, Dave, and said, hey, there might be some possible old-growth forest on the west slope of North Percy Peak. And Pete Bowman, NHB's ecologist and wildlife specialist, visited the site in August, and he collected vegetation plots and he quartered some trees. So here's his GPS tracks and waypoints. To orient yourself, here's North Percy Peak, South Percy Peak. So some of the observations. The surveyed forest is between 2,100 and 2,600 elevation. It's primarily a high elevation spruce fir forest. That's how we have a natural community classification as well as natural community system classification. Systems are big, and then within a system could be multiple natural communities. It's red spruce dominant, with size ranging from 13 to 20 inches DBH. There were numerous paper birch snags and down logs. And he cored 4 red spruce, and the field counts were between 130 and 160 rings. So he took some pictures. Here's some pictures. Here's a red spruce. Apparently it was rotten in the middle, and he almost couldn't get this core out, but he was able to. And so some of the conclusions were that this was an old forest. This was a mature forest, but it was not old growth or old forest. But it could be, if left alone, it could get there in a while. So, based on the tree ring counts and forest structure, it's a mature forest. It's primarily a mix of red spruce, balsam fir, and paper birch. The paper birch had kind of fallen out due to the natural, change in the species, and so the spruce was now the sole canopy dominant. And absent large-scale disturbances, the forest will continue to mature and eventually develop old growth characteristics. So moving on, this is in the in 2021 we developed, we surveyed, this is the natural community systems of Nash Stream Forest, and this was something that Pete worked on. And so we're going to focus on the northern hardwood seepage forest. We call this the bird because it looks like a bird, and then there's this section, and this section. And so we saw those, and we wanted to get out and really try to define the boundaries more minutely, or focus on that. So that's another thing that he did this summer. So these are forest seep or seepage forest systems. That's a system, and then within that system is an uncommon natural community in New Hampshire. It's an S3. We rank communities S1 through S5. S1 is rare, S5 is more common. So the northern hardwood seepage forest is an uncommon natural community. So he went up, and we have area A, area B, area C, and then the bird. And that's what was delineated during 2019. And that was a total, we kind of, estimated 265 areas, but the boundaries were not really delineated too closely in 2019, so he returned. Northern hardwood seepage forest natural community. It's found primarily in northern New Hampshire. It occurs on slopes where groundwater seepage maintains permanently saturated soils. Remember that part, it's going to be important in the future. The canopy is typically dominated by sugar maple and yellow birch with some balsam fir and occasionally black ash. It's very lush and has a diverse herbaceous layer, often with glade-like canopy openings. And the wetland community, this wetland community rarely shows up on NWI maps. So here's a pretty picture. And any guesses as to some of the herbaceous plants there? You win a prize. Yes, it is. Okay, results. So the red are the more definitive boundaries based on Pete's work this summer. So you can see that we reduced, so area A, we actually kicked it out. We said it's not extensive enough to be mapped as a northern hardwood seepage forest. It should be mapped as a typical northern hardwood forest. Area B, we defined that more closely. We reduced it by just under 30 acres, and it should be considered exemplary. Area C, I like to think of this as a phoenix flying south. So the red area is what he kind of worked on, and that's what we that increased to 63 acres, and it's a more irregular shape. So some interesting notes on Area C. If you look and you notice this large marshy opening, that's approximately 4 areas, and then there's also numerous, around 12 small herbaceous openings. It's likely that these openings are the result of past timber management activities long time ago. So these photos, this is the closed, these are the same systems, the closed canopy seepage forest in Area C, and then the large herbaceous opening in Area C. Some conclusions about this work. Tree removal on saturated soils may raise the water table, making the sites too wet for tree seedlings to establish and compete with dense herbaceous vegetation. Recovery to a forested wetland structure may take decades given the impediments to tree seedling and establishment. So we're guessing that there was past management in here, and we just didn't, because the soils were so wet, it didn't get a chance to kind of come back to where it was. So any questions? Okay, you're my boss. You're not supposed to have questions. Go ahead.
I'm allowed to be curious. And I wanted to ask you this when you showed me this presentation before, but I appreciate that the soils are so saturated that trees can't get reestablished in that opening, but did Pete find any physical evidence of stumps or ruts in that open area that indicated past harvesting?
The answer is no. before it was even under.
Oh, I'm sure it would be like 100 years ago.
Yeah,
It could have
it
been
was
like
long.
crosscut salt for all we know. But
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Was any of this seepage forest in the natural areas?
Oh goodness.
No, it was not.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Is it gonna be?
So what we do first is we try to get the facts, and so we got the facts this summer, and now we put the facts together, and then then we work together, and I talk to Patrick, and we have meetings, and we assess the management, whenever there are proposed management activities.
So we're having internal discussions, Jamie. We really just learned of this collectively now. Our colleagues in National Heritage Bureau share this data with our Forest Management Bureau, and we sit down and we say, how do we protect this natural community and still accomplish the goals that we've outlined in the management plan and make adjustments accordingly. So it's a trade-off, but it doesn't, just from a physical operations standpoint, and I'm sure my forestry colleagues would support this, it doesn't make, those areas seldom if ever even freeze in this North Country climate because the water and the movement of water below that surface is so considerable. So it would be a quagmire to put any machinery in there, even in the deep of winter. That said, we would just have to do a calculation to see how much merchantable timber we may have calculated in those areas would affect our growth, our harvest plans. Is that an accurate?
More or less, yeah. We have no interest in operating saturated soils, Jamie, you know that. And every operation that we do has a planning report, which is essentially a mini management plan, and it's reviewed by Natural Heritage Bureau, it's reviewed by all of our various agencies that are charged with land management. And so,
Yeah, it goes through a very rigorous
so we don't-
internal assessment.
Yeah, Heritage has input and review of every timber harvest. And so certainly if there was an area that was of concern or exemplary, it would be brought to our attention. Obviously, we'll now have the shape files for those areas that they've identified, and those will go into our database, so they'll come up anytime we're doing any type of planning. So we work very closely with our sister bureau.
I'd certainly cast a vote for protecting it and buffering it too.
Other questions related to Sabrina's talk?
I was curious about the old growth, the putative old growth. Again, fairly steep slope.
Oh yeah.
So it's not in the management zone.
It's in the natural area.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just
And
curious.
there's northern white cedar in there too.
Probable natural disturbance rather than logging to account for it not being older than say 160 years.
Probable. It's a lot of bedrock exposure in that area too. Wind is a major factor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, election of committee chair. Now that Mike Waddell showed up, we have a quorum.
And Sally.
Glad to be invisible, Dave.
Okay, so we need to have an election of,
I nominate you as chair.
Second.
I nominate Mike Waddell as vice chair.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Yeah, very quiet.
Next. Okay, that was quick.
Way to go. That was.
Patrick, do you want to make a? I should make a note. Also,
yeah, sure.
that one of our members, Bill Noon, is retired. He's no longer representing outdoor recreation, and so we have a new candidate that Patrick will introduce, and I think many of you already know Sue Wentworth.
Right. So when we learned that Bill Nunes had basically resigned his position here, he represents the outdoor recreation and tourism sector or interest on this committee. I cast around to my staff and to Dave, and I'm pretty sure Susan Wentworth's name had come up a while back when we were actually looking to replace Jeff Luigi, who resigned a few years ago. We found Sally instead. So Susan's name was still kind of floating around, and I asked around, and I got all positive reviews. And so I reached out to Susan, who's here this evening. I keep pointing over here. Susan is with us this evening. Many of you know her. She provided a brief bio, which I'll share with you all. Prior to moving to Northumberland in 2011, we lived in southern New Hampshire and would travel to the White Mountains for camping, hiking, as well as skiing in the winter. Once we relocated, we discovered the beautiful Nash Stream Forest and began volunteering with the Cohouse Trail Association. This area was basically unknown to us until we moved to the area. During the past 11 years, we have seen an increase in the number of visitors around the local towns, especially since the White Mountains have become so busy. Nash Stream Forest is a wonderful resource for the area, attracting diverse outdoor enthusiasts. Many visitors take advantage of the restaurants and lodging in the area. Definitely a boon to the local community. And I'll just add that verbally on the phone when I talked with her, she said she'd be pleased and would love to join the group and help represent the interests of outdoor recreation and tourism. So.
Thank you, Patrick. And Susan is also the president of the Cohouse Trails Association, so she has a lot of experience with trails. So what we're waiting on is Senator Chuck Morse to do the approval. That's how the process is done for many of our members, not all. But, so we're just waiting on that. Thank you for coming tonight. Next item, conflict of interest statement. Did everyone get a copy of that Will sent out 2 months ago? We can resend it.
Resend it. I didn't get it.
It's the annual one. It goes to the Secretary of State. Oh, you filled it out? Okay.
I'm delinquent.
Okay.
The dog ate
The dog ate yours. Okay. Also,
Do you have a hard copy?
I have days.
I might have an extra hard copy.
Maybe in the future that would be the way to do it. Bring a hard copy and we'll sign it during the meeting.
We can make copies that way, don't fill out that.
Okay. Patrick, or Will, were there a couple of people that we don't know if they got their letters?
Oh, yeah, but they're not here.
Okay. I thought
Looking for, Kevin and Dave Scanlon.
Okay. Well,
So I have another business.
Sure.
And that is something I raised last year, and I feel that I have to raise it again this year. And that is that I believe that both the easement and RSA 215A42, and I think it's section 1B, prohibit ATVs in Nash Stream, and I've done more research since last year, and I don't feel the state is taking this seriously, and I think we have to do this. And I've put together a sort of a chronology since 2001. This should be enough for members. Basically, when the ATVs were opened up here in 2001, 2002, already this was a problem. And I feel that it was ignored. Actually, I'm giving you the upside down side, so it's on both sides. The easement, I think it's section 2C. Can we pass these around? Section 2C states that New Hampshire reserved the right to preserve and manage certain specific uses of the Nash Stream Forest. It continues, and I'm now quoting directly as opposed to a paraphrase, uses which are not expressly reserved by the state shall be prohibited by the state. There is no mention whatsoever of ATVs, OHRVs, or anything that could remotely be considered an off-road vehicle in the 1989 easement. All rights not explicitly reserved by the state devolve to the Forest Service through the easement. That's the way it's written. And so I think that there's just, the easement, it has been violated in 2001, 2002 when the state did that. The vision statement in 1995, the 95 plan, managed the land with as little interference as possible with natural ecological functions. I think that's something that has not been honored by ATVs. The 2001 Legislative Committee on ATVs issued 2 reports. One was a finding in early December, and one of the findings was Fish and Game is not capable, given current funding and staffing, of handling current ATV traffic. They then issued a report at the end of December that said that the state could open trails in the Nash Stream if such trails, all applicable state laws are appropriately enforced, and it added that new ATV trails be created only when DRED and the Trails Bureau has resources to monitor and maintain trails for ATV use, and Fish and Game has resources and made commitment to reasonably monitor ATV use and enforce applicable laws. So 9 days earlier, the commission had already said Fish and Game doesn't have the capability. I'm not blaming Fish and Game, they just don't have the capability because of funding and whatnot to meet that. Now this clause later became RSA 215A42 subparagraph B, essentially. So that recommendation became codified into law, and we have never met either of those. The West Side Trail was opened in August of 2002 without any effective studies. John Lanier, in fact, in I think it was January or March of that year, said, I'm going to need 1 season before we open the trail to get baseline data, and they opened the trail in August of 2002 anyway, so he never was able to get that baseline data. In 2007, they reviewed studies in the January Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, and Phil Bryce acknowledged that the results of the 3-year mammal study had been inconclusive and there were many problems with the study. There has been no subsequent study. They also reported on those minutes that when the West Side Trail was a snowmobile trail, it was covered in vegetation, which of course minimizes erosion, sediment, dust, etc. That by 2007, in other words, after 5 years of ATVs, the vegetation had completely disappeared on the trail, and there were serious problems with it. So there, and in 2004, of course, the trout restoration project begins, and we have still not had any monitoring that I'm aware of on the West Side Trail in 20 years now. The counters were put in 2 years ago, and that's the only thing we have. So we don't know if there are any impacts from all this ATV activity on the Nash Stream, and particularly on this $1.4 million restoration project. And that strikes me as irresponsible, as well as in violation of the law. When the Kelsey Notch proposal was made in 2013, Jim Oler of Fish and Game wrote that existing funds and manpower are thinner and thinner. Additional enforcement efforts on the Nash Stream State Forest or other new trails in the North Country will be marginal at best. And then he added, there doesn't seem to be a clear plan for meeting law enforcement needs on the expanded Nash Stream State Forest ATV trail system or other proposed North Country ATV trails. And he ended by saying ATVs were not part of the original management plan. In fact, it was the least controversial debate that the management plan group had. Everyone agreed they were illegal under Diamond. The state continued that, and the people writing the first management plan were totally opposed to it, even if we fought over everything else during that period. In 2016, John McGee wrote about the incredible erosion on the Kelsey Notch. The sediment coming off this road and entering perennial streams is tremendous, all capital letters. He recommended that the trail be closed until it was repaired. It wasn't repaired for another year or so, and the trail remained open. In the 2020 Kelsey Notch monitoring report, Fish and Game biologist Jacob DeVoe expressed continued concern over the impacts of noise pollution on wildlife. And there have never been any credible noise studies done. Back in 2016, AMC, TNC, and SPNF wrote to court and stated existing ATV trails in Nash Stream are in clear violation of RSA 215A42. And then in 2020, a real estate law firm in Boston, hired by those three groups, reiterated this. Based on my research and relevant New Hampshire law and regulations applicable to snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, and other off-highway recreational vehicles, I conclude that the legal opinions set forth in the 2001 USFS opinion regarding the permitted use of ATVs on the tract of the forest land known as the Nash Stream Tract and subject to the easement deed are inconsistent with applicable New Hampshire law. So we have a track record of the Fish and Game being incapable of providing adequate safety and enforcement. We have no monitoring on the west side, and Kelsey Notch monitoring only began in the 5th or 6th year of the provisional thing, and only when Cord forced the issue. And there is growing concern about the impact on non-motorized recreation in Nash Stream. And here's an area where climate change really does matter. We've got basically a recreational activity that is voluntary, and I think only 1.6% of the residents of the state of New Hampshire even register an ATV. And it's a big carbon emitter. It's not an essential service. It is a fun thing for some people, and we've got a climate crisis. And so we've got an illegal activity that's exacerbating climate crisis, and we need to stop this.
Let me ask, what was the response from the U.S. Forest Service and their general counsel to the Ropes report?
As far as I could tell from it, they ignored it and simply reiterated Wagner's 2001 statement, which he made, and which incidentally the state, the ATV committee, the Nash Stream Committee at the time, then promptly ignored. Wagner said, as long as it's an internal road, no external stuff or through stuff, he didn't see that the Forest Service had a jurisdiction.
You're referring to Tom Wagner, Tom Wagner Woodlands.
Yes, Tom Wagner, excuse me. Yes, and at the very next meeting of the Citizens Committee, the subcommittee on ATVs, they said, well, we think that's premature, and we're more interested in this west side thing, which was, access from outside and in. And so I think they even misinterpreted Wagner's limit on that. And so what we have basically is something that just got railroaded through without any planning, and now we've inherited that, but we don't know what the situation is because we don't have any monitoring. And I think that this is reckless, irresponsible, and illegal. And a lot of the problems that we have, the Citizen Committee meeting notes, the minute notes, going back to '98, in the early years, they talked about a whole diversity of subjects. Starting in '98, ATVs dominated. I mean, sometimes entire meetings were ATVs. I think half of the meetings since then were at least 50% or more ATV discussion. The staff time we know is considerable, even though we don't know the number of hours. I think the staff has more important things to be doing. And so all of this, and I'm now talking about West Side in particular, West Side had 1/10 the amount of clicks as Kelsey Notch. So it seems to me that West Side isn't getting a huge amount of use. It's hardly an essential service, and it's illegal. So the way to solve this would be to shut it down.
Would that require an amendment to the Nash Stream management plan?
It seems to me that.
I'm not a lawyer, so
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
well, I mean, probably we would be told, yes, it seems to me that if we're outside the law, getting straight with the law would not require an amendment, but,
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I kind of feel like the rest of us, I don't know what we're here for. You know, I went through this planning process, and I understand that I'm probably never going to agree with Jamie on a whole bunch of things, but his opinions were listened to, mine were listened to. We came up with a plan. The plan went to Concord. We're an advisory group. We may vote, but we don't have the force of law. And so once it got to Concord, our recommendations were acted on by the state and by the partners the state is working with. Now at that time, if there was something in the plan that was illegal, it was a duty of the Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire and or the federal Attorney General to intervene and prevent the plan and that particular aspect of the plan from occurring.
Interesting.
I have no intimate knowledge of how that went exactly, although objections were raised, very similar to what's in this letter. And as I recall, they were acted on, and the state of New Hampshire determined that the plan, as we sent it down, was acceptable. It was accepted. It was sent back. Our job now is to monitor it and make comments as we go along. And so with having said all that, I raise an objection.
I'm not sure those issues were raised
Listen,
at the time.
I gave you all the time to do your 2-page thing. You've brought friends. They've had unlimited time to make comments. No public body that has to meet with the public on a regular basis, and I'm speaking as a selectman of, at this point, going back to 1989. And I serve on a lot of committees. But if you're going to have an effective body, then there needs to be some separation, of the committee's work and public comment. Public comment's extremely important, but it can't come in the middle of the meeting without warning, and anyone who shows up can speak endlessly. There's no time limit. Now, we don't have a structure for that, and because we don't have a structure for that, you can't really control it. Anyone can do just what happened here tonight. But there are two things I want to make points about tonight. One is we need that structure if we're going to operate effectively. And every board of selectmen in the state of New Hampshire, as far as I know, has that because they can't exist without it. Second, we need to not relitigate the plan until we start the formal process of redoing the plan. The plan was accepted by the state. For us to go back and rehash this thing at every meeting that we have, thank God there are only 2 meetings a year, because my sense is that we could do this every week. I'm never going to convince Jamie of my view of the world. I understand that. I believe it or not, I respect your view. I just don't agree with it. So at some point, in order to move forward, we kind of have to agree to disagree once we've had a vote, and they've had a vote down in Concord. Now we have a solid plan, and then we'll have a chance to vote on it again when we review it again. But do you hear what I'm saying? So my recommendation to this board is to adopt standard language for public comment at our meetings and have it at every meeting. And then, time is variable, but we allow at the school board that I'm a member of, we allow 3 minutes to public hearings, as much as 5, and so on and so forth. But it's not, you have a regular, you come to a meeting, you can expect this is the format. We're going to sit down, and then you give the public a chance to question you at the end of the meeting. That's just my suggestion.
I understand your points. I also think that the public may have questions as we go through these various sections. For instance, Sabrina's report, she had to leave. I mean, if people have a question, the public, I think it's appropriate. Our timing was good. We still have, up until 8 o'clock to go.
There's certainly the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
So I leave that to you, but I put that out on the table.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Any other discussion on that? No, I do appreciate both of your comments. When's the next plan revision? Is this a 15-year plan? 10. Oh,
So it'll be 2027.
that's just
Right.
around the corner.
Well, it
I think I'm
actually
retired
is,
2026, I think I'm retired.
because we're gonna have to start prior to 27.
That's right. And I suspect that's going to be the time that we can really get into these discussions. And we do have a major section on climate change in here. It's obvious we're gonna have to strengthen the section on carbon sequestration and carbon storage. Somewhat new topics, not new to some of us, but that's gonna have to go into the next plan. But I don't know what to say about, we know we have issues with OHRVs, and there's views that we don't wanna cut trees or that we wanna continue cutting trees, but we've got the plan, and that's where we're dealing with.
I respect the plan, but I don't think that we want to defend a plan that is doing something illegally, and that's the distinction I'm making. In other words, yes, if I want to change the timber program or something like that, I need to wait until we have the next planning process. But if we're in violation of the law, shouldn't we be asking the state to follow its own laws?
I don't know if we're in violation of the law. If I knew that, I would be screaming bloody murder. I don't know that. I'm not a lawyer. I took a 3-credit course in environmental law one time, and that's it.
That's why I quoted a lawyer.
I got a C in it.
But we have different opinions from
Yeah,
different
right.
I mean, this is
Sort
one
of
lawyer.
going to court, I don't think you're gonna be able to, I appreciate all the work you put into this, Jim, this is,
Yeah.
a lot of research
I'm
here.
gonna keep this.
And there's a legal opinion, in here, but there's also, most of the things that you have in here have been reviewed by either the U.S. Forest Services Council or our council. And there's differing opinions, all three parties. I think the Forest Service and our Attorney General are pretty much in lockstep. Maybe a little wiggle room here and there, but they definitely are not in agreement with this interpretation here. And I think short of it going to court, I don't think we're gonna resolve it here.
Okay, but since there is no monitoring, one element of that clause is not being met. And since the fishing game has never been able to adequately respond to the demand for enforcement and safety, and I'm talking about 2001 and right on up to the present, that part has not been met. So clearly, that part of RSA 215A42 is not being met, and my understanding, not being a lawyer, is that's a violation of the law.
But
That's all
then
I'm
again,
saying.
it goes, what's your definition of monitoring, what's your definition of enforcement? Because we have COs out there, we have rangers out there that are doing enforcement, and Maggie, the Trails Bureau, and Fish and Game are going out and doing annual monitoring.
Well, on Kelsey Notch.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, because I don't disagree with anything you had in here, but.
Okay, well, as far as monitoring on the west side trail is, the first monitoring we got was the clickers a year or two ago.
And the Kelsey Notch report will not just be Kelsey Notch this year, it will also incorporate the west side.
Well, that's good, but there's still 19 or 20 seasons.
I'm just
that-
telling you that.
But there was, I thought I provided you some old reports. I provided somebody some old reports on the west side monitoring from the early 2000s. So there was monitoring that had occurred on that trail in the 90s.
I'm unaware of them. I've studied the minutes of the citizens' meetings.
I dug them out for Taurine at some point a year or two ago, made copies of them. I think, Craig, you might have got a copy of them.
anyway, basically, it has, even if it was done for a few years, it hasn't been done for most of this time, and the law says it's gotta be done. And we spent $1.4 million on, trout recovery. It would be nice to know if we're undermining that.
Okay, other comments?
I would appreciate, as advice to our chair, reiterating something that Mike said, some structure around comment timing. As the committee, it'd be great to be offered a chance to comment first prior to the public. So if we are going to have public comment throughout the meeting rather than at the end,
Okay.
I think as a committee member, that's ideally the structure of the committee.
Okay.
And so I'd appreciate some structure around conversation and how we approach engaging with material in the agenda.
Okay.
I was going to do that offline, but sometimes it's good to air it in the online as
that's
well.
fine.
So
That's fine. Yeah.
I was thinking very similar to Mike, that in order to build a culture around a committee around decision making, especially if we're heading into management planning, it would be great to be able to have conversation as a committee. And I felt like we kind of lost that tonight. So I hope some guidance and leadership from your end can help cultivate some table-based conversation and then invite the public in and kind of balance that. I would really
So
appreciate
you want to have the public comment at the end?
I would appreciate some structure around that. And if you feel like it has to happen after every matter or like at the end, just to make sure that we can actually cultivate conversation as a committee, I would appreciate that.
Chris?
It's an example of monitoring that was done on West Side. They measured how much noise an ATV made. That's not monitoring. Sound monitoring is where you have receptors all through the forest that measure the sound and you make a map of the sound of the ATV. So that's an example of monitoring that wasn't really monitoring. Second of all, the public comment, I think the public brought some intelligent facts to the committee that they didn't even know about. So if the committee was really informed, if they read through the documents, maybe put in a 91A yourself about something, wouldn't have the public offering you things you don't want to hear if you already knew those things. So I think the committee, if you don't like what the public's saying, to come to the meetings informed about stuff.
Okay.
And if the data on carbon sequestration was public, we could comment on it. So whatever data that Nash Stream is using to defend the logging, that's not posted anywhere.
The FEMC report's on our website under Pisgah State Park. You can see it anytime you want.
I've had a lot of trouble finding anything on that.
I'll send
FEMC
Jamie a direct
website.
link and he can share it with you.
Okay, because, the Forest Service will do a project, they'll send out the data. Yeah, you can comment on it, but you'll never hear from them. So you guys need to put your data out, and then when people comment on your data on logging and carbon sequestration, then you need to respond to that. So I know it's inconvenient, but just throw the public to the end where they say something and you go home and forget about it. That's not fair to people who spent hours looking at the issues.
All right, I'm going to go around the table now, and I'll start off with Elizabeth, just to see if you have any comments that you want to make at the end. You're good?
I'm good.
You're driving home to Merrimack tonight?
Yes.
Drive carefully.
Yes, I will.
And Albert, anything from your town?
I agree with these guys that, we should run a meeting with the committee.
Okay.
And then, but also, we're following the rules as they are now in the book. Let's leave them alone. We'll worry about it in 6 years or whatever it is. Not keep thrashing back and forth on things that it's not going to change.
Okay. Thank you. Albert.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Said enough.
You said. Wow, speechless.
No?
No?
Wow. Sally.
I regret that I arrived late and halfway through the presentation on the harvest operations. And I spent a lot of time in timberland and the Northeast, and I just am floored by the integrity of the work that the state does and the management deployed on Nash Stream. So I regret that I missed the beginning of it. I just love seeing the photos. I loved getting on the land. And
Thank you.
You're doing a tremendous job.
We could
It's really,
send
it's like
you-
powerful stuff. It's really
We could
cool.
send you the PowerPoint.
I got most of it. I think I'm good.
Okay.
I think you just missed Dave's summary of the.
All right.
Yeah.
You're already talking.
There's only
about it,
Dave
so I didn't-
stuff.
every other summer.
I'll talk with Patrick.
You know what?
I'm driving him home, so.
It's the only time I get out of the office, so we're gonna have one next summer.
There you go.
Yeah, like that last stand we ended on, like that's the stuff we dreamed, and it was pretty cool. The forest is
I
forever.
got dinner right there in the
Lives
box.
rent free in my brain.
Thanks, Sal.
And
So yeah, I just
Jamie-
wanna say thank you, and you all got long drives, so thank you for coming.
I appreciate the work you guys are doing, and my arguments are, I hope, not personal, and I thank you for all you do. And frankly, I'd just like to free you up for more of that work and less of the time on that other topic. And I vote for 2 meetings a year rather than 1.
Okay, we'll have to discuss that. All right, do we, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All, we're out of here.